cut off my sister after she slept with my husband and told me to stay out of their business. Years later, they begged me to take care of their son while she recovered from a car crash. I'm 36, and I've been divorced for 3 years now. My ex-husband, Caleb, who's also 36, cheated on me with my sister, Alyssa, who's 32, during our marriage, and that's what ended things between us. Caleb and I met at a friend's party when we were 25, and that's when we started dating. We dated for 3 years before he popped the question, and then we tied the knot. We were married for about 5 years before I discovered he'd been cheating on me with Alyssa. Caleb and Alyssa first met when I brought him home for dinner, maybe 6 or 7 months into our relationship. At that point, we were pretty serious and figured it was time to meet each other's families. I had already met his folks, just his parents since he didn't have any siblings. My family, on the other hand, is pretty big. I'm the middle kid. Our oldest brother is Chris, who's 40, and he's basically the only one I talk to from my family these days. The first time I brought Caleb home for dinner, he hit it off with everyone, but especially with Alyssa. They found out they had tons in common, like their favorite TV shows, books, and even the type of food they liked, and they really connected over that. I thought it was sweet. I had no clue what it would turn into down the road. They became really good friends, and I was glad Caleb was getting along so well with my family. I also had a good relationship with Alyssa back then, since we were closer in age than I was with Chris. Alyssa and I would sometimes go out on double dates with our partners, and we had a lot of fun times together. She dated a few guys while Caleb and I were a thing, so she'd show up with a new dude each time we hung out. She'd even crack jokes about wishing Caleb had a brother so she could date him instead. Sometimes she'd say stuff like Caleb was the perfect guy and how lucky I was, but I always took it as a compliment. I never thought much of it because I figured she was just giving Caleb props, and there was nothing wrong with that. It never crossed my mind that she might be hinting at something because I trusted and loved her so much. When Caleb proposed and we tied the knot, Alyssa was over the moon. In fact, she was my maid of honor at the wedding. So you can imagine how devastated I was when, after 5 years together, I found out they'd been hooking up behind my back. Before you ask, there was nothing that would have made me suspicious. I trusted Alyssa more than anyone, and I trusted Caleb too. In my mind, they'd never do anything to hurt me, I was sure of it. So, for 5 years, Caleb and I had a pretty smooth relationship. Sure, we had a few small bumps like he wanted kids and I wasn't ready. He wanted me to cut back on work, but that wasn't possible because I made more than him, and the lifestyle we had needed my income to keep us afloat. He thought I was too focused on my career and wanted me to chill out a bit, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make him understand that we needed both our incomes to maintain a stable life. For context, I'm an investment banker, and it's a super demanding job. He's in marketing and he's pretty good at it, but he's not as into it as I am. I mean, I'm not complaining. I love my job and it's helping me chase my dreams, so why wouldn't I work hard for it? As for not wanting kids, that's a no-brainer for me. I just wasn't mentally or emotionally ready to be a mom, and I'd rather not do something at all than mess it up. Especially when it comes to parenting, I think if someone isn't ready, they shouldn't be pushed into it. I didn't want to have kids and then regret it, and I've been upfront about it from the start of our relationship. But he figured I'd change my mind once we got married and as time passed. I have no idea why he thought that since I always said I didn't want kids. Anyway, these were the big issues between us, and most of our major fights were about these two things. Like any other couple, we had our little squabbles and disagreements, but we always managed to work through them. Even during our big blowouts, we'd end up making up, and I knew we were in it for the long haul. Or at least I thought so. I'm not sure he felt the same way. My point is, we'd fight, but we'd always patch things up. He always told me he loved me, right up until a week before I found out he was cheating on me, and I never had any reason to question his loyalty because he never gave me any. But a week after we celebrated our 5-year anniversary, I discovered he was having an affair with Alyssa. Even on our anniversary, he was being all sweet with me at the party, acting like I was the only one that mattered to him. But that changed big time when I discovered he'd been cheating on me. A couple of days after we celebrated our anniversary, I was rummaging through my wardrobe, trying to find something, but I couldn't find it, so I figured I'd check Caleb's wardrobe. I don't remember exactly what I was looking for, but I know I had a work thing coming up a few days later, and there was this specific blazer I needed. I thought maybe I accidentally put it with his stuff, so I started looking in his wardrobe, and while I was at it, I accidentally grabbed a bag he had stashed way in the back. Out of curiosity, I pulled it out and started going through it. To my shock, I realized it was stuffed with women's clothes. After checking out a few items, it hit me that I had seen these clothes before, and I realized they were all Alyssa's. I couldn't wrap my head around what was going on, and I was totally confused. I was completely lost because I couldn't come up with one single reasonable explanation for this. So I decided to look through his phone, something I had never done before because I trusted him, and he had never done it to me either. We had never given each other any reason to do so, but at that moment, I felt like I had to do it because even if I did ask him about those clothes, he would have time to come up with an excuse and hide evidence and stuff like that. So I decided to just go for it. I knew the password to his phone and I decided to check his DMs, and sure enough, when I opened his chat with Alyssa, it started out innocent. But when I scrolled up, I noticed that the way they were talking to each other, friends don't talk to each other that way. They were flirting with each other, getting intimate by text, and making plans to hook up, which explained all those late nights he was supposedly working. I figured out this whole thing had been going on for a couple of months. And wouldn't you know it, Alyssa happened to come over for lunch that day. So the two of them were pretty lucky that I had them both in the house at the same time, and I confronted them together. I showed them the text and the bag of clothes I found in his wardrobe and asked for an explanation. But instead of saying sorry or even trying to deny it, they just told me it was none of my business and that I needed to stay out of their affairs. I was totally shocked by that response because, come on, this was definitely my business. If my husband was cheating on me with my sister, I think that counts as my business. I didn't hold back and started yelling at both of them that day, but instead of reacting to any of it, they just kept acting like it was no big deal. Caleb even had the nerve to tell me that since I wasn't giving him a child and wasn't spending enough time with him, which was super hypocritical because he wasn't willing to compromise on his fancy lifestyle, and I was the one supporting it. But anyway, that's the reason he said he had to look for other options, and he and Alyssa got along really well. Alyssa said I should actually be thankful that he chose to keep it in the family instead of going outside, because that would have been even more embarrassing for me. They told me they weren't going to stop, and as a matter of fact, now that I found out, they didn't see any reason to hide it from me anymore. They had only been keeping it under wraps because they wanted to avoid the drama and were just waiting for her promotion so she could move away from here, and Caleb would then follow. But she wasn't against the idea of revealing everything now and getting it over with. It was really nasty, and I don't even know how I made it through all of it. There wasn't much to say after I found out the truth since they didn't seem guilty about it, and I was not going to forgive him for it, that's for sure. So I decided to file for a divorce, and after I told my parents, they cut Alyssa off, and Eric also stopped speaking to her. Literally, nobody from our family had any ties with her after that, and they didn't seem any worse off for it either. A couple of weeks after that, Alyssa moved away to Pennsylvania, which is a 9-hour drive away from here, and once our divorce came through, 3 months later, he also followed suit. He didn't contest the divorce or my petition and left everything to me. I guess he figured that now that he was with Alyssa, he wouldn't have to worry about money. She had been promoted to a better position, and that meant better pay, so he didn't have to worry about losing out on my wealth and the settlement that he would get from the divorce. I guess he was just in a hurry to get it over with, so he didn't put up much of a fight. And I'm glad about it because that allowed me to get it over with quickly. Since then, neither I nor anybody else from our family has had any contact with her. We don't know where she is. We don't know what she's been up to. We never bothered to find out. My friends who still follow her and are in touch with her know better than to talk to me about it. So to sum it up, I have no idea what's going on in her life. It's been 3 years, but I'm still trying to recover from everything, and they really messed me up for good. However, I was reminded of everything a couple of days ago because Caleb got back in touch with me. He called me up from a number that I didn't recognize, and unfortunately, I've had the same phone number for the past couple of years, and I didn't think much before answering that phone call. As soon as I picked up, I should have just hung up, but you know how curiosity gets the best of you sometimes. So I stayed on the line and listened to him. He sounded pretty desperate and upset, and he quickly told me he was calling to ask for my help, which was pretty bold considering we hadn't spoken in 3 years and things didn't exactly end well between us. You'd think the least he could have done was apologize, but nope, he skipped right to the point. He told me that Alyssa had been in a car accident a few weeks back and couldn't move because she had fractured both her legs and her arms were all bruised up a couple of months ago. They also had a 2-year-old son that needed looking after. He said he had already tried to get his friends to step in, but they were all busy, and none of them wanted to take on such a huge responsibility. He couldn't handle everything by himself, especially since he had to go to work and try to earn more money now that Alyssa was going to be on bed rest for a while and couldn't work. They had to make sure Alyssa was taken care of, and handling both a 2-year-old kid and Alyssa, who was so badly injured, was just too much for him. They had thought about hiring a full-time nurse, but even that was out of their budget since the area they lived in was pretty pricey, so now they were relying on family to help out. They had already called my parents, but they said they were too old now, or they would have definitely agreed to it. My in-laws weren't an option anymore since my father-in-law had passed away just a year ago, and my mother-in-law lives in Canada with her sister, so she wouldn't be able to help even if she wanted to. And they had also called Eric, but he said he wanted nothing to do with them anymore. They didn't trust anyone else to look after their son while they were out of commission, except for me, because they weren't tight with their extended family. So as a last resort, they were literally begging me to help them out. And after years of holding it in, I finally had my moment. After he finished telling me all about it, I just told him I couldn't help because it wasn't my business. Then I hung up and blocked his number. I didn't even bother to get into the details and just left it at that. Eric thinks I did the right thing, but unfortunately my parents don't quite agree. They think 3 years have passed, and I should be over it by now, especially since Alyssa is going through something so awful, and I should be there for her. I don't even get what they're going on about because they think I'm being stubborn by refusing to help, and I think they're being ridiculous for even expecting me to help after what they did to me. I feel bad for the kid, I really do, but again, that's not my problem. They insist that I'm being selfish and stubborn, and I should at least think about it before saying no. It's been a couple of days and my parents are really getting to me because now I'm not sure if I did the right thing or not. I wouldn't have felt bad for them, but there's a child involved, and that's why I'm rethinking my decision. Am I wrong for refusing to help my sister and my ex-husband out with taking care of their son since he cheated on me with her? Update 1. Hey, first off, thanks so much for all the comments on my post. Thanks for taking the time to say something. That was really nice of you guys. And now about my decision. I'm not changing my mind. I'm still staying out of their business, as they put it themselves. My parents can think whatever they want about me. I really don't care. They don't have the right to tell me if I should move on or not. I'm the one who got hurt, so I'm the only one who gets to decide how I feel about this. They don't get to control my feelings. I do, and I always will, feel bad about their son, but again, that's not my kid and not my problem. If they feel so sorry about this situation, they can step up and take care of their child themselves, instead of making excuses about how old they are. They're just in their early 60s, they do everything that normal people do, and it's not like it's that big of a deal for them. If it's just a matter of a couple of months, I'm sure they can help out. But they don't want to do that, they just want to dump it on me. When I told my parents my decision and said I wasn't going to change my mind, they told me they were cutting ties with me too, since I was really selfish and stubborn and they couldn't believe I was going to act this way, even though Alyssa was so severely injured. I don't know what's so hard to believe. They screwed me over once, and I'm not about to let them walk all over me a second time. It's as simple as that. I don't think I'm doing anything wrong. I haven't talked to Eric about it yet, but I know he'll be on my side as he has been so far. He's a little busy with work right now since he just signed a new project, and it's going to be a couple of days before I can find enough time to discuss this with him. But until then, I'm pretty comfortable with my decision. I don't know what's going to happen to Alyssa, Caleb, and their son, and I really hope they do find a solution for the sake of their child, but it's not my problem to worry about. Update 2. Hey, it's been 1.5 weeks since Caleb tried to get back in touch with me. I blocked him back then, and so far, he hasn't been able to reach out to me again. But I heard from Eric that they've been trying to reach him non-stop, and even Alyssa has been hitting him up. But he's been totally ignoring their messages and just leaves them on read. I talked to Eric a couple of days ago, and he told me that he had decided he was done keeping in touch with our parents because they were being super unreasonable and selfish. It's ironic because that's exactly what they've been accusing me of being. It serves them right, honestly, since now they're on their own and they don't even have Eric to call family. They still have a chance to make things right with their other daughter, Alyssa, but I don't think they're going to step up and take care of their son. It seems unlikely because my parents are the kind of people who say they love their close ones but won't go out of their way for anyone. I've seen that in them with Eric's kids. I won't get into it much, but there was this one time a couple of years ago when Eric's older son fractured his wrist after a nasty fall at the playground, and he must have been around 4 years old at the time. Eric's business was going through a rough patch back then, and he asked our parents to lend him some money so he could get a physiotherapist to help his son's wrist move better after the cast came off, but they totally shot him down. Apparently, they told him they were getting old and had to save for their retirement too, so they couldn't just hand out money like it was charity. Eric was cool about it and didn't bring it up again because he didn't want to seem entitled, but I thought it was pretty selfish of them. So it's not very surprising to me that they're still not helping out with their grandkids. It's just what I expected. I just hope that they get it when Eric and Alyssa won't let them see their grandkids down the road since they've never bothered to help out. If their kids don't deserve any help from them, then they shouldn't expect to hang out with their grandkids whenever they feel like it. But that's just what I think, and even though I can't stand Alyssa, I hope it all works out for them in the end. Update 3, so this is gonna be a pretty long update. It's been almost 2 months since I found out about the accident that happened to Alyssa. I haven't heard from them directly, but I've been keeping in touch with Eric, and he's the one filling me in on everything. I told him I was cool with him staying in touch with Alyssa and answering her messages because, to be honest, I wasn't feeling great about the whole thing. I don't like Alyssa, that's for sure. And I absolutely can't stand Caleb, but at the same time I'm not cold enough to wish anything bad on them. I know their 2-year-old son hasn't done any of the messed up stuff they've done in the past, so I told Eric to keep talking to Alyssa and help her out if she needed it. They were bad people, but that doesn't mean I have to sink to their level. I already got my revenge by refusing to help them, and that was that. But families are complicated, and I just can't bring myself to wish bad things on anyone, no matter what they've done to me. It's just not who I am. I feel like I have to defend my choices because people can be pretty judgmental sometimes, but anyway, I'm getting off track. That's why I encouraged Eric to talk to them. At least that way I'd have some peace of mind knowing that my nephew was doing okay. That's all that really matters to me, to be honest. So 2 weeks ago, he finally reached out and asked how things were going over there. And Alyssa told him that things were pretty rough. They had to depend on daycare for their son. It was eating up their money because their neighborhood was pricey, and driving hours away every day wasn't an option, especially since Caleb had to work. And she couldn't do anything for herself anymore, so it was really tough. On top of that, they were falling behind on rent and at risk of eviction, which hadn't happened yet only because she was seriously hurt. The landlord was nice enough to give them a couple more months, but after that, they had to pay up or move out, and she had no idea where she'd get the cash. She had asked our parents for help, but they said no again, saying they wanted to save for the future. I get that they want to be ready for any medical emergencies or whatever, but it's not like we wouldn't pay them back. We've never been like that. I don't get why they're always so weird about money when it comes to their own kids. It's not like we're thieves. But this time, when my parents refused to help, she flipped out and told them she was done with them. This time, she was the one cutting them off for good. And as much as it's like Caleb and Alyssa, I think they made the right call. They're toxic, but so are my parents. It's a miracle how Eric and I turned out okay, considering the people we were around. But anyway, my parents won't see their grandkids for the next few years, that's for sure. And they've got nobody to blame but themselves. They're not even gonna have any access to their kids, now that you think about it, since I'm not speaking to them. Eric isn't talking to them anymore, and neither is Alyssa from this point on. So they pretty much are on their own. I can't say that they don't deserve it. I definitely don't feel bad for them. Now coming to Alyssa and Caleb. Eric and I talked about what was going on with them, and I told him that I would be okay if he wanted to help them. My conscience wouldn't let me stand in the way of that, I'm sorry, but I just can't do it. Personally, I'm gonna stay out of their business, like they said. But I'm also not gonna discourage anybody if they want to help them. And Eric told me that so far, he hadn't been on speaking terms with her, just because what she had done to me was so wrong. But now, it's really hard to stay mad at her because despite everything that happened, she was in a tough spot, and as her older brother, he couldn't just sit by and watch his nephew suffer. Because he knew for a fact that Alyssa's son was having a really tough time dealing with all of this emotionally. And so, we decided that he was gonna send some money to them every month until they were able to get back on their own 2 feet. I'm actually glad that he's doing it because I know that nobody had taken a stand for him when he was going through a tough time. My parents didn't do anything for him, and I tried to help him out financially when he was going through a slump in his business, and so did Alyssa. But we also had to look out for ourselves, and we weren't in a position, unlike our parents. They're pretty well off, so they could afford to do it. Again, I'm not trying to sound entitled, but they could have helped out, but they didn't. And even though Alyssa and I weren't exactly in a position to be philanthropists, we still tried to help. So now I guess it's only fair that Eric returns the favor and helps her out as well, regardless of what she did to me. I'm never going to get over that, but whatever. My main worry was that my nephew would be suffering, but now that it's dealt with, I can go back to not thinking about them at all. I honestly just don't want anything to do with either Alyssa or Caleb. I feel bad that something so terrible happened to them, but now I just want to move on with my life. I think this was the closure I needed because even during the divorce, I still hadn't felt like it was over as much as I do now. I'm going to just focus on my work and my own life and try to better myself in every way without worrying about other people anymore. I don't have to deal with any other toxic people since I'm no longer in touch with my parents either, and I'm pretty happy about it. I'm single and I have a lot to live for, so I'll be fine. Thanks so much for sticking with my story and for all the support you've shown me.